Pat Conroy died recently. He was an award-winning American author. He wrote The Great Santini. And The Great Santini is a novel that focuses on the troubled relationship between a Marine fighter pilot, Lieutenant Colonel, and his family, and especially one of his sons. It's a powerful story for sure. When I went out for a morning run this morning, I went out for a long run, very long run, and as I started, I was thinking, I'm not sure I'm going to even make it through this long run, but I did. And but as I was running, and especially after quite a ways, thinking about the Great Santini, thinking about why I still go out for long runs early in the morning. And this got me thinking back to early experiences in the infantry in my Army career. When I was enlisted, did a tour, I guess you could say, as an enlisted infantryman with the 101st Airborne. And in any case, thinking about the Great Santini, thinking about running long distances early in the morning, made me, well, at least those two triggers. Maybe there are some more triggers behind the curtains, but I had to think back to a squad leader I had. Not the first squad leader I had, but the squad leader who had the greatest impact on me. And that was a Great Santini experience. Definitely. So first the running part, the running bit. I was thinking back, definitely not, these are definitely, deeper recollections, not things I think of on a day-to-day basis, of course. But this squad leader would, from time to time and completely without, warning. So in the morning, as the company formed up in the early morning darkness for PT, physical training, and then we would break off into platoons to do PT, and as was very, very, very common in the 101st, at least when I was there as an enlisted soldier, almost always we would break off into squad PT. The point being that leaders at the lowest level, lead their units directly. So squad PT was a big deal. And when I look back, it built great squad cohesion. But from time to time, this sergeant, the squad leader, would, again, without any warning, after we were done with a very, very quick preparation, squad leader would say, all right, we're going for a long run. And he would say up front, he said, I'm going to run you all till the last one of you breaks. So what that meant was we would start running, and we would run, quickly leave the cantonment area. We would be often running in the training areas, backwoods, just run and run and run until each or until the last soldier broke, was lying on the side of the road, you know, couldn't go on another step. So, man, to think back, this guy, this squad leader. First of all, let me tell you, I never thought when I first saw him that he was any type of had any type of special physical conditioning at all. As a matter of fact, I looked at him and would say, this guy kind of looks like a couch potato. And yet he had some type of, bionic ability to run. Not only could he run forever, he could speed up without any apparent extra exertion. He could speed up very fast, and he always appeared to be just running in the same casual manner. Never seemed to lose his breath, and he could run fast for a very long time. So nobody ever beat him. So what it meant was, as the soldiers in the squad couldn't keep up and fell back, again, once he had broken the last soldier, then he would slow down. And when the first soldier got back up with him, he would start circling back and, picking up one soldier at a time and getting them back into formation. But very particularly here, first, you were personally devastated that you fell out. Then you were devastated. Then you dreaded him coming back to get you. You just absolutely dreaded this, because he wasn't just coming back to get you. He came back to get you, and when he got you moving again, the whole way, as he brought you back up into formation, the whole way, he would just berate you like there was no tomorrow. And it's interesting because this type of squad leader, he could yell, and he yelled from time to time, but that was really not his thing. He had the ability to berate and berate and berate in a way that was so, it was more the controlled anger, controlling anger. So he could make you feel, 2 inches tall, and he did. And so it was an unbelievably painful experience to even get back up into formation. And then when the formation was all back together and we started moving back, back to the cantonment area, back to the company area, he just went on and on about, not letting your buddies down, pushing yourself, never quitting, which are all perfectly valid lessons that infantrymen must learn. So I guess I'll backtrack a bit here. So let me first of all say that, we're talking 1999. So was that 15 years ago already? Was that 15 years? No, I'm sorry, that's more than 15 years. Yeah, definitely more than 15 years ago. Okay. Without a doubt, to say up front, that was 1999, and this squad leader sergeant was, absolutely old school. Okay. So a lot of what I'm going to be talking about actually is, at least what I want to get to in part should be couched in the terms that we don't do things like this anymore. Not even in the infantry. Things are just done differently, and I'm going to get to that. I'm definitely going to get to that. Thinking about the great Santini, and then I'm out running this morning, and thinking as I started running, man, I don't even know if I'm going to make it through this run. All of this is the stuff that kind of brought back this memories of this squad leader. And right away, I mean, I cannot think of this squad leader or my experiences under this squad leader. I cannot think of this squad leader without thinking how much I really disliked the guy. I mean, I really, really disliked him. I didn't show it, of course, but really disliked him. And on numerous occasions, when I was, when things were so, let's just say, stressful in a great Santini kind of way, and there were so many of those moments, I remember thinking to myself, I mean, it was to the point where I had to think to myself, I said, this is not, this is not the end for me. One, this is not the end for me. Two, I will never go on in the Army, advance my career, and be like this squad leader. I had to tell myself, no, this is not, I'm going on, I'm going on, and I'm going on to bigger and better things. And I also thought very, very specifically, I said, the way he handled that, when I have the opportunity, I'm not going to do things like that. I will not do things like that. By the way, I want to interject at this point, having said that I think this is one of the marks. I think this is one of the marks of truly living. This is one of the marks of truly living, that you learn a lesson, that you tell yourself, when I'm in a position to, I guess teach a lesson, I will not do that. I will do something different. I will do something better. And then, however much time may pass in your life, when you get into that position, you actually do things different. I think that's a mark of living. And so that's where I want to say how, even if I'm going to jump around in time here, when I was a platoon leader, I was not like this. And I was specifically not like this. When I was a company commander, I was not like this. And it's very specific. I mean, it's I am not going to be that type of leader, that type of toxic leadership. I will not display and spread. So now jumping back to the squad leader. Having put I never intended to just lay out the negative. I laid out the negative first because as I was running this morning and thinking about this, I was like, wow, these powerful negative recollections are still so strong, so present. Okay, but and also I said I never liked the guy. I never did. I don't think for a moment that I learned to like him or anything. There was no great epiphany. There was no. The great epiphany is, I'm not going to be like that, and we don't need people like that. We just don't need people like that. The infantry doesn't need people like that, and well, yeah. And I'll pick that thread up in a bit, but I will say, okay, so now as I look at my peers back then, the other squad members, I will say some of my fellow squad leaders, they really liked him. However, I want to point out that I was 9 or 10 years older than my peers, and I could really dislike this guy without showing it, and I did. When I look at these peers that liked him, they were young. They were young guys, and I don't think that they really liked him. I think they liked the power that he exuded. Utter confidence and power. Great Santini. I think they liked that, and then they thought they liked him because of that. They were young kids though, and I think that's what they were reacting to. That's understandable because, I mean, it is an infantry squad in the 101st. I mean, the squad leader is talking about cohesion, camaraderie, pushing yourself. I mean, pushing yourself to be the very, very best. That's the good side. The bad side and the toxic leadership part is that basically there was a lot of negative stuff that came along with that. So the squad leader was super competitive, right? So he's super competitive with all of his squad leader peers. I mean, and we're talking about a squad leader who had to win, had to be number one. We as his squad, we're really just, things for him to be great, things to make him great. And we're talking about a squad leader who would cheat. I mean, it's all the negative stuff that went along with that. So, I mean, on the one hand, yeah, you can say there was the bust through your limitations and be the best you can be, yeah, but no, the reality is, the toxic part is the ends always justify the means, and that's not good. So that's not good, plain and simple, not good. In the end, teaching the wrong lessons, I guess. So, and here I am still, I guess pushing myself in long runs. The same leftover, like, residual something, right? Residual driver there, yeah. Okay, so what happens? First of all, just a few years later, I'm a brand new lieutenant, brand new platoon leader. As a platoon leader, well, first of all, as a platoon leader, it's still a very tight organization. The platoon is still should be a very tight. The infantry platoon should be a very, very, very tight organization, and that's what I strived to achieve. And actually, I should point out, I mean, I guess kind of in full disclosure, it is interesting that as I was going through my first level of, like, basic platoon leader training and education, I actually picked up the idea of kind of mapping out what I would do with my first platoon. Well, you're always thinking about your first platoon, not that you think about anything beyond that, but thinking about that first platoon and thinking about how I'm going to lead it, what I'm going to do, right? A lot of reading, a lot of talking with experienced leaders, a lot of reflection, right? I say this because it's funny, I had two kind of game plans, right? I had a game plan where I came in and I was assigned a platoon that was underperforming. And so my game plan was, how do I take an underperforming platoon and, take it to the top in performance? And then I also had the game plan of, what happens if I come in and I'm assigned a platoon that's already at the top, near the top, if not at the top in performance? What do you do then? This is important because too many leaders, especially inexperienced younger leaders, they think they have to come into the organization, come into the platoon, come into the company, and they have to think, I'm gonna fix things. Well, you don't know anything's broken, and they come in and they say, oh, I'm gonna make the platoon the best. Well, what if it's already the best? Then what? Are you gonna? Your leadership is not gonna connect with reality, right? Reality is you might have the best platoon. Then what? So, anyways, my game plan for that was, how do I maintain the platoon's, performance? And lo and behold, I show up and to the battalion, assigned to the company, and assigned the platoon, and what do you know? I got the top performing platoon. Top performing platoon, that hands down the best platoon sergeant, one of the best Bradley gunners in the brigade. On his good days, he's the best. I'm handed all of this stuff, good stuff. So obviously, I switched to my game plan of how do I maintain this, and that's what I focused on. How do I maintain this? It's very different. It's very different. I went in with the, so if you can imagine, I go in and I've got a lot of very, cocksure squad leaders, platoon sergeant, they're looking at me as the dead weight, and so you don't go in there, with this attitude like, I'm gonna fix you guys. You just can't do that. So instead, it was switching to the tack of, we're a team. We're going to learn from each other. We're going to work together. This is more of a, team of equals, and that worked. But back to the great Santini. Already, it's just doing things differently. And what I learned, and this was not very quick, but over time, learning that it's better to build positive motivation in each soldier, and then in each subordinate team that makes up your organization. Make people, make soldiers, make them want to do their best, but give them success. Teach them how to handle success. Teach them how to build on their own success. And Now, lest anybody think that I was some type of, lest anybody think I was any type of, coddling leader sitting down with a bunch of, sensing sessions, or, well, actually I did do sensing sessions, but that's an entirely different story. Sitting down and doing like, emotional therapy or something. Not the case at all, and that would be a huge mistaken impression that I'm giving. So let me go in reverse order. I'll tell you, when I was a company commander, my soldiers, and especially my subordinate leaders, not so much my soldiers, but my subordinate leaders, so we're talking not even so much my XO, my executive officer, but especially my platoon leaders, primarily, and my platoon sergeants, secondarily. Well, actually, and the squad leaders, to go down another level. They knew early on that I could be, how do I put this? I could explode. I absolutely could explode. However, and it's everything that you can imagine from that. However, that only came with things like, well, stuff that was, safety hazards, things that were, potentially disastrous, loss of eyesight, limb, life, playing around during a live fire exercise, stuff like that. Yeah. So I could do that. I'm not going to lie. I could explode, and I could really tear into, really rip into, especially a platoon leader. And it is true that this didn't happen often. It was never, anything, permanent, right? I kicked them down a few times, but I made sure I got them back up. Now, in retrospect, I could have taken the tack of always doing this in private. That is certainly a valid lesson that I basically picked up from one of my superiors, who was very good at that. I mean, he was always cool, calm, and easygoing in groups. But if he was going to tear into you, it would always be private, and that's great. That's a great trait to have. But as you might tell from the tone of my voice, it's not me because like when I came out to visit a live fire exercise, and I found the platoon leader. Let me give an example of why I can't go along with the lesson of basically always criticize in private, praise in public. Great lesson, but just in my experience, when I showed up to this live fire and I found the platoon, changing the planned training. This is a live fire exercise, live fire maneuver exercise. Changing the planned training and doing a bit of what I called on the spot, and everybody heard me from 10 miles around, this cowboy shooting. The thing is, I was right up in the face of the platoon leader, which is kind of funny because he towered over me, but that was completely irrelevant. But the thing is, I knew when I walked up and I saw what was going on, I knew that his squad leaders and his platoon sergeant had basically, gotten him to go along with this. It wasn't really, the platoon leader's responsible, but this had come from probably the squad leaders. And so while I was tearing into the platoon leader there on the spot, it was a group thing. It was a group thing, plain and simple. So I got the lesson from my superior, as I already said, the value of criticizing in private, praising in public, but again, in my experience, those, not very often, but this was a group thing. They did this together, and so I still could have handled it separately with the platoon leader. That's true, but part of my thinking was this was always training and preparation for deployment. There wasn't, and things were always on a short timeline. We're talking never having enough time to train up to the level you want before deployment. I mean, you're going into combat operations. They're going into combat operations. They're going to be operating beyond your, immediate control. They're going to be operating beyond your, your immediate control. You have to impose a command climate. And the bottom line is our timelines were always too short to get ready. And things suffered because of that. But anyways, that aside, that was kind of the to be completely honest, yeah. I was okay with eventually the soldiers as it trickles down. I accepted that they could see unbridled anger in a brief period of time, as long as they believed I had their welfare topmost in my mind, and that's really what I'm emphasizing most of the time. Most of the time, I'm emphasizing that. So probably wandered a bit here, but it just, from the earlier experience with the squad leader to my later experiences as a platoon leader and company commander, which by the way were very different. You can't even, it's very different being a platoon leader and a company commander, but I just had a lot of, even with as at the platoon level and company level, even with the combat operations, even with the stresses of that, even with the everything that comes along with that, right? Even with that, I had many opportunities to build strong leaders. And by that I mean able to shape leaders who were able to learn the most they could from their experiences. So that's incredibly rewarding. What more can you ask for, right? That's not the great Santini. See, what I'm getting at is, and I'm not trying to be, I can't portray myself as, some great example of anything. See, the great Santini was a deeply flawed person, but you're still going to get some understanding of kind of where he came from, even if you can't. Well, you should not accept his behavior and everything, but you should actually understand where he's coming from. And so I'll just say, while it's important to, at the end of the day, again, let's go back to the real world platoon leader, company commander, you got to save your men. Right? That much everybody can learn. You got to save your men, one. And by the way, this is not something that I think people like to hear, but if it comes down to not being able to save every man, you do everything you can to save as many as you can. At the end of the day, I know that's a very vague language, but you're in the infantry, you have an infantry mission, you train, you try to become the most capable you can at the infantry mission. And when you, and if and when you go into combat, you know, it's time to perform. And, you know, in combat, you're gonna do what you have to do. And so my point is, all the positive stuff you need to do before. Now that much I do believe. You gotta be a really positive leader, because you gotta build up strong individuals and strong subordinate units, because combat is going to wear that down. That much is true. And that should not be some, you know, great revelation. Combat is going to wear that down, and to one degree or another. So you got to build it up beforehand, and to build it up, I think you have to use positivity as a tool. Yes. Now, does that negate, you know, me exploding on a platoon leader on a live fire maneuver exercise before, you know, months before later combat experience? No, I don't think it negates that at all. You know, the great Santini presents himself as infallible, as all-powerful as God to his men. This is what's different. I mean, you can't do that. You just can't do that today, and you shouldn't do that, because that's not the way to maximize the development of those under you who you are responsible for. You, as a platoon leader and as a company commander, as that's the fundamental thing that it's funny how, and this is a perfectly valid idea, it's funny how much my peers picked up in their commissioning experiences. They picked up that it's their responsibility to lead these soldiers that they're assigned. I always felt more that I was responsible for developing those soldiers, and maybe that does come from having been enlisted first. But I felt more I'm responsible for developing these men that I have been given responsibility for. See, developing has a much longer term, right, connotation than just leading. So in terms of, and so when I say I always felt primarily a responsibility to develop subordinates, you develop primarily through positive and constructive relationships, basically. But the infantry being what it is, at least, I never ruled out, and I can't rule out, that at the end of the day, you also have to be, you have to wield negativity as a tool, but it's a tool you want to use sparingly, obviously. And it's interesting, you know, I told I don't know how many times I told my men, I think as a platoon leader, I know as a company commander, you know, I told them up front. I said, in garrison, when we're training up for deployment, don't expect me to always be nice. Don't expect me to always be on your side. Don't expect me to be understanding. But I said, when we deploy, that's going to switch 180 degrees. And that's exactly what happened. I mean, there is no I found there was no place after we deployed and we're operating in a deployed environment, operating on combat missions, on combat patrols. There's no place for there's no place for being, not understanding, not constructive, so on and so forth. I probably didn't complete that idea nearly as much as I would have liked, but I think that's enough. Great Santini, long runs, leadership, developing subordinates, toxic leadership. That's it.